Shells of last winter's snow still crouched in the hollows when I returned to Rimward Valley, but the inn smelled of hyacinth, and every doorway was hung with copper wind rattles, sure signs the festival of Second Light was near. I had not planned to stay. My train ticket home lay stamped for the following dawn, but a letter from my sister Ansa awaited me at the check-in desk, sealed with a smear of brown-red wax. The note was short, written in her minute hand. "Ellie, come to the South Meadow on Lantern Night. Bring the memory we buried." Nothing more. I felt both tugged and warned, as though the valley itself had drawn a blade and laid it gently against my ribs. I first watched the festival as a child. That year, Father pressed me to his coat, while the priests pricked his fingertip, letting a single ruby bead fall into a basin of rice wine. Lanterns bloomed like pale fruit across the dusk. Hush fell. Then the priestesses kindled each thin-ribbed globe by dipping a reed in the sanguine wine and touching it to the wick. A whoosh of lilac flames spiraled into the paper bellies. They floated upward, hundreds, maybe thousands, and something more than warm air carried them. They thrummed, faintly at first, then louder, as if each lantern had caught the donor's pulse and was rowing itself through the sky on that rhythm. I loved it then, because children love miracles before they understand their prices. But I left Rimward at 17, after Mother's funeral, vowing never to bow again before the valley's old rites. Ansa stayed. She became a school teacher, planted vines along the porch, learned which herbs coax sleep and which summon sharper dreams. Her letters were bright with gossip, yet she never mentioned the festival beyond polite footnotes. Lantern Night passed safely, or the river carried the bodies of light further this year. I thought she had grown sensibly skeptical. Apparently I was wrong. The day before Lantern Night, I hiked to the South Meadow. Gentle hills cupped the field, and yarrow nods whispered the wind's direction. Ansa waited by the shrine tree, its bark peeled away and symbols darkened with ash. She wore festival white, but the hem was stained. When she hugged me, I felt raw knots of muscle beneath her shoulders. She had the body of someone surviving rather than living. "I'm glad you came," she said. "I need you tonight." "For what? A sibling reunion?" Ansa shook her head. "For the return. You remember how it works." I remembered and did not. The official story said the lanterns carried prayers skyward, then drifted back at dawn, weighted with blessings. Little silk pouches tied to their rims. But I had snuck out in adolescence and seen something else. Round lumps the color of river clay nestled in those pouches, pulsing wetly before cooling to stone. No one spoke of them. By noon they vanished. The memory was one we had buried literally. Ansa and I dug a pit behind the smokehouse, dropped the thing we found, and swore never to ask. "You dug it up?" I asked. Ansa pointed to a satchel at her feet. "It's beating again." My throat pinched. "Why?" "Because the lanterns are getting hungry." She glanced to where the valley's 5 hamlets met at the river fork. "Tonight they're demanding more than the usual drops." I told myself she was being poetic. But the satchel thumped, unmistakably organic. I recoiled. Ansa's face softened the way a teacher gentles a child who has glimpsed a wolf. "A heartbeat must come from somewhere," she said. "Last year the wind stole. Lanterns crashed, and the priest blamed weaker faith. This year they want stronger fuel. They'll ask for a cup from each donor, enough to puddle in a bowl." "That's insane." "Folks will refuse." "They can't. The charter binds them. We signed, remember?" I did. Every valley child stamped a thumbprint onto the charter at age 10, entering a compact older than steel rail. But charters break. Or so I believed until Ansa unbuckled the satchel. The thing inside was a heart. Our heart, the one we buried years ago. Dull cords of root and tendon drooled from its valves, as though soil had tried to claim it. Yet it beat. Each throb raised lacy filaments of frost from the satchel's leather. Whispering a brittle melody I felt in my teeth. "It woke after the equinox," she said. It drums my dreams. I think it wants to go home." I almost walked away then. Instead, I said, "What do you need from me? Stand beside me when I refuse." I laughed, because refusing seemed easy until I saw her hands shaking. Blood, price, charter, ancestry, the valley could break a lone twig. Two might splinter slower. Night lowered, like ink poured into water. Drummers convened at the old mill pond, while villagers filed beneath lantern arches, each arch strung with fresh paper globes. Priests in indigo robes stood over cisterns of rice wine darkened by gesture after gesture. A prick on a thumb, a palm scored, a wrist nicked just enough. Some donors smiled like farmers nourishing seedlings. Others wept. The wine's surface rippled as though alive. Ansa and I reached the cistern last. Her white sleeve bore a crimson crescent. She had cut herself earlier, disguising the wound as festival enthusiasm. When the priest extended his ivory-handled lancet, she stepped back. A hush cracked the music. "I decline," Ansa said, voice steady but soft. "My blood stays with me." The priest's smile held. "The valley carried your mother through childbirth, your father through winter fever. You owe light." "I have paid. Drops enough." She lifted the satchel. "Tonight, I return the surplus." Gasps. I expected someone to snatch the bag, but the crowd parted like wheat before a storm. Ansa unhooked the clasps. The heart rose into the air, buoyed by invisible currents, thudding louder than any drum. Red luminance radiated from it, staining lantern skins so they glowed prematurely. People knelt without knowing why. "Second light belongs to all," Ansa declared. "Yet you feed it self by self until nothing remains." I release what was taken. At that, the heart tore open in a whirl of petals. No, not petals. Thin shreds of parchment shaped like miniature lanterns. Each scrap bore inked names. The donors, countless over years. They scattered upward, merging with the unlit globes overhead. For an instant, the sky resembled a snowstorm of vows. The chief priest recovered first. He gestured, and 3 wardens advanced with hooked poles used to snag drifting lanterns. I shoved the first warden, feeling bone jar bone. Then the air cracked. Lanterns lit themselves, one after another without the priest's reeds. Violet flame, deeper than wine, sprang from dry wicks. The sound of heartbeats multiplied until it was impossible to distinguish my own. Lanterns tore free of their tethers, rising too fast for ropes to hold. Sparks rained. A handful careened into the crowd, singeing sleeves but leaving skin unblistered, as though the fire sought only a scent. Within minutes, the valley's sky was a dome of glowing seed pods. They pulsed, not randomly, but in the synchronized cadence of a single, enormous heart. I thought that would be the crisis, but the lanterns kept going until they vanished into cloud. People staggered, uncertain, deprived abruptly of the rite's climax. The priest turned on Ansa with wolf eyes. "You have loosed them. They may not return." "Then no more hearts will feed your wine," she answered. "But tradition is tenacious as kudzu." The wardens bound us with silk cords, a ceremonial restraint that tightened if one struggled. They dragged us into the reflection hall, windows on all sides to watch whichever direction the lanterns might reappear. The hall normally served as banquet space. Now it felt like a cage, with a view of sky. Hours crawled. Around midnight, the first squeal arose, a silhouette, descending. Not a lantern, something heavier. It fell past the hall and struck the plaza with a sound like fruit onto marble. Another followed, then dozens. The wardens, curious, opened the doors. The prisoners stepped outside to a rain of shapes. Lanterns, yes, but inverted. Their rims crumpled inward as if turned inside out during the journey. Each carried a lump bigger than the silk pouches of old. The lumps were hearts' duplicates, perfectly sculpted, still dripping. They lay at the donor's feet, matching beat to beat with the originals inside their chests. Some people screamed. Some wept praise, believing it a holy gift. a second core of self, proof of favor. I watched Farmer Leroux pick his twin heart off the cobbles. It cleaved to his palms, threads extending like veins hungry to sew themselves home. Ansa and I exchanged a look of horror. Two hearts cannot share one body without cost. I remembered anatomy lessons. A redundant pump could flood vessels, rupture lungs. The priest, however, wore triumph. "Second light's bounty," the chief announced. "Fuse the gifts, and you shall burn brighter." He produced silver needles, rattling in a lacquered box. Wardens ushered townsfolk to makeshift stations where priests would suture the twin hearts beneath ribs. Some argued, but blood compels deeper than words. The duplicate hearts called to their masters with a magnetic tug. One by one, donors lay down. We had no duplicate. Ours had dissolved into parchment, so wardens ignored us. Ansa whispered, "We must stop the stitching." "How? Bound like this?" She flexed her wrists. Silk tightened, drawing a hiss. Silk is protein. Blood is solvent. Before I grasped her intent, she scraped her old wrist wound against the ribbon. Crimson seeped along the fibers, and the silk's weave slackened, a trick from weaver's lore. Silk undone by moisture and salt. I pressed my own cuticle until blood welled, smearing the knot. The cords loosened enough to slip free. By then, the first surgeries were underway. Priests opened chests with obsidian blades etched in runes. No antiseptic, no sedation beyond herbal smudge. Pain rolled across the plaza like thunder swallowed. Yet the donors did not flee. Their second hearts pulsed impatient, commanding. Ansa strode to the cisterns. The rice-wine blood mixture remained black as eclipse. She overturned a brazier into the nearest cistern, ire-kissed, liquid. A low boom threw sparks higher than rooftops. Priestesses screamed as flames spider-webbed across the other basins, drawn by spilled rivulets. Suddenly the air smelled not of hyacinth, but scorched iron. The wine itself seemed to burn, releasing a roar akin to many voices shouting in unison. Surgeons faltered. Needles dropped. Those half-stitched donors convulsed. Their duplicate hearts wriggled like eels inside open rib cages. The crimson glare reflected in their eyes was not any ordinary flame. It felt old, older even than the charter. "Eli!" Ansa called. "Help me open the halls. Let the air take the fire." We flung doors wide, smashed lattice screens. Wind barreled through the banquet hall, carrying fire outward in rolling tongues. Lantern frames scattered in the gale, bone-thin bamboo slats clacking like teeth. The blaze leapt from cisterns to the inverted lanterns on the ground. The paper did not perish, but flared brighter, lifting again. Each burning globe now carried two hearts. The donor's duplicate, and whatever unknown engine gave the lantern life. Freed, they spiraled skyward with savage grace. People collapsed. Some clutched chest wounds their second hearts had vacated. Strange most survived. The duplicates had never fully fused, so original hearts kept rhythm alone, yet emptiness glazed their expressions. They had tasted plurality of self and lost it in the same breath. The chief priest stood amid ruin, robe smoldering. He raised his lancet to strike Ansa. I tackled him, the blade slashing only air. We grappled. He hissed, "You think starving light makes you hero? It will seek blood elsewhere. Beyond the valley." I rammed his head against stone. He fell silent. Dawn seeped over ridges. Survivors gathered, ash-dusted, watching the fragrant smoke coil away. For once, no collective chant rose to greet the sunrise. Silence gave room for private reckonings. Children searched the debris for their parents' duplicate hearts. None remained. They had gone aloft, perhaps to birth new folklore. I expected council elders to arrest us. Instead, Mayor Kesselel woman, whose own surgery had been moments from completion, approached, clutching her intact chest. She asked, "Who has—" "What the— It was never supposed to be like this," she murmured. "Old scroll said the lanterns returned blessings, not organs." "Blessings can rot into burdens," Ansa said. Kessel nodded. What now? Bury the charter. Ansa met her gaze. Build another, written with ink, not blood. All morning villagers hauled broken cisterns to the riverbank, letting corrupted wine bleed into waters that would carry it far from any mouth. They tore down the wind rattles, shoveled ash over the plaza, wrapped the obsidian blades in linen, and lowered them into a stone vault to be sealed. As noon tolled, Ansa and I walked the ridge above the valley. From there we saw faint glimmers in the bright sky, lanterns still ascending until the eye lost them. Whether they would ever return did not matter. We had granted them freedom. Or perhaps they had claimed it. That evening we sat by the inn hearth, sharing tea steeped with yarrow. My train left in an hour, but I was in no hurry. Do you think they'll forgive us? I asked. Eventually. Grief turns like soil. She rotated her teacup, tracing the rim. I hear two heartbeats when I sleep, one mine, one missing. It echoes, but it's fading. I considered the vast quiet outside broken only by cicadas. Somewhere above, countless lanterns carried stolen duplicates, drifting among cold stars. Perhaps they would seed other skies with second hearts, or maybe flames would consume the organs until only ash remained, snowing softly over lands that had never known our festival. Either way, the valley's pulse belonged once more to its people, beating patient as a held promise. When the time came, I did not board the train. Instead, Ansa and I walked home, where the porch vines had started to bud. We tended them, pruned winter's dead tendrils, and watched new green wick upward, fueled not by sacrifice, but simple, stubborn life.